Well, money can make or break us, and what we do with it shows a lot about our life's priorities. Today, we want to talk about our relationship with money and how it might be driving us in directions we never really wanted to go. Joining me to talk about it is Brad Hewitt, author of Your New Money Mindset. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my honor to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you know, one of my favorite quotes about money is by Will Rogers. I'm sure you've heard it many times. Too many people spend money they earn to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like.
Right. I've heard that, and I love that too. And it's, if you were going to wrap up a lot of the research from the book, it says that's the behavior. How do we actually recognize that that comes out of a relationship with money and the heart, more than habits, more than mechanics? And it's really wrestling with that heart issue that drives a lot of that behavior.
This is what I love about your book. You know, it's written with James Moline, a licensed psychologist. And, you know, generally when we're talking to people who are experts about money, it's all about my dad is chartered accountant. Write a budget, follow a budget, get an RSP. You know, these are the kinds of things, right? But you basically say in this book, you can't do any of that until you start looking at your like what's in your heart, what drives your behavior.
Right, and we actually think it actually starts with understanding your own money story. And so you actually have to wrestle with kind of what's my money story, and we all have a money story, and we all have a relationship with money. And interestingly enough, it starts with the heart, not with the head, not with the mechanics, not with the practices. And when you start with the heart and you start to understand then kind of your story, and you start to understand God's story a little bit about what there is a story about money that comes down virtually in all religions that actually has some truths about money, it actually does take us in a very different direction.
So a lot of people say, if you know, speaking of the Bible and God's story, so people misquote the verse in the Bible which says money is the root of all evil. Right. That's not actually the quote, is it?
It's a relationship. It's the love of money. And interestingly enough, if you think about a relationship with a person, you want to drive towards intimacy. You want to have a real intimate relationship to have a great relationship. With money, you want to have just the opposite. You want to have a lack of intimacy. You don't want it to be controlling your emotions. You don't want money to actually be driving all kinds of things. You want to have it to be a relationship that's actually quite different than you would have with a person.
So people say money can't buy happiness, but most of us, even though we might pay lip service, that we actually kind of do believe if we had a little more money, we'd be happier. Is that not somewhat true?
So what's fascinating is these are things that we've discovered that I would describe as half-truths. And quick story, I worked at a church for a little while, and I asked the question what a heresy was, and the person who was an expert at this said it's when we take a half-truth and we make it the whole. And we actually have things that we do with money that drive us to we bought into a bunch of half-truths, let me say it that way. And one of the half-truths is that more money will make us happy. And it's partly true. It does for a very short period of time, and then it wears off. And it doesn't actually ever get you to where you really want to go. And so when you get on this hedonistic treadmill, if I just had more, I'd be happy, and you never can get off it. And what we really want is contentment. And there's a way to move towards contentment, which is different than just getting more money.
Yeah, and you talk about that as the difference between a surplus mentality with money and getting more money, which is how most financial experts drive you toward more money.
Right.
And your studies are finding that people with more money are actually less happy about it.
They can get less happy. What's interesting is most of our financial plans try to drive us to get from scarcity of money to an abundance of money. And they drive you through processes where you get to an abundance of money. But it doesn't necessarily move you towards that contentment or a sense of belonging or a sense of community. And so what we've discovered is that you can't just work on having more money, you have to work on this money mindset. And that's the whole point of the book is what are the tools and systems that we can use to actually get us to an abundant mindset, not just an abundant circumstance.
So what does that mean, an abundant mindset?
It would mean that I'm confident in my future, I'm content with what I have, I'm actually a valuable and feel belonging part of a community, I'm living my calling with the way I've created to be, I'm not making decisions about vocation by how much money it makes, but by how I'm created to serve. And what you find is people who have those attributes actually are happy, and you can do it at almost any income level. Mm-hmm. And so we find people who have a surplus mindset who can make $30,000 and $1 million. It doesn't matter. It's harder as you make less because of the world and how much it costs to live in a house and to buy groceries and everything, but you can do it at almost at any income level.
And one of the things you talk about that I really love is charity and how acts of kindness can actually help your sense of satisfaction around money. Tell me about that.
So generosity and acts of kindness, what I think of those are two things. It's the prescription if you want to move to a surplus mindset. It's the prescription to do it. And what it is also is the outcome. It's a life when you're living in that surplus mindset and surplus circumstance, you find that it's the natural outpouring. So we see generosity as the tool to actually help people create this surplus mindset. And so generosity is a really important part of the financial plan that you need to put into place. Gratitude and generosity, and those are some of the things in the books, is those tools are just as important as the CPA's budget that we need to work on.
It's funny, talking to a very close friend of mine who's very successful, and she's saying a lot of her friends in her world, she's a vice president, she's an executive, so she said we've had this success, and now in this season of our life, 50 and above, we're starting to think about what kind of legacy do we leave? How do we make an impact on the world? How do we do things that matter? And her whole mindset's changing, and I'm seeing it happening.
Right.
Is that normal?
Well, I think we start to recognize the truth that some of the things that we worked for aren't producing the results that we were hoping for. And so I think as you get wiser, older and wiser, some of those things become more obvious. But my observation is it's a little bit like running a marathon or lifting weights. You can start early, and if you just decide you're going to start to run a marathon and do it the next day and you've done no practice, it's really hard. So part of what we're trying to say is these are practices we can build in our life from early on, giving, trying to find ways to serve others, actually building a sense of gratitude and contentment, are actually little bits at a time so that you don't have to wait to the end, that you can experience that the whole life. So I think more and more people, as you get towards this point in career, is was it all worth it? Wrestle with that very question.
And you think about all those things that drive us toward wanting more are the things that get us into debt, which puts more pressure on us. You can see why people with more money actually are more insecure about their financial future, because it's just more and more to maintain and more to get and
more to manage
and more to lose.
More to lose.
Yeah.
So they become less and less willing to take risks. They actually work almost against the things that they want. So for example, a really simple example, we almost all talk about financial independence as a goal, and yet who really wants to be disconnected from community and become completely independent? And generosity, again, as a simple tool, is a way to actually not move towards financial independence, but financial dependence with a whole bunch of people who are willing to help you, and you can help a whole bunch of people. Isn't that a much better place to be?
Yeah, and you think about the position that we give from, and I've been in the developing world many times and seen so much more contentment among people who have so much less than us.
Right.
You know, they're just not that longing for more, and I think we all, that's wealth, I guess, in a sense.
Absolutely. Although, what I see, it's in every community. It's just such a part of human nature. I remember we had some missionaries staying with us when I was a kid, and we asked them what their biggest challenge was of their work, and they said greed. And we knew they were working with incredibly impoverished people, and they said, yeah, as soon as they got a wood floor, they wanted, a cement floor. And so I think it's actually something that we share with all humanity, that this desire for more and some of these things are part of how we're made, and so we have to wrestle and fight against it.
Well, we've only touched the surface of all the good stuff in this book, Your New Money Mindset, and we want to make this available to you. It's just today, one day only, but if you support the work of 100 Huntley Street and the message of God's love that we try to spread across this country, we would love to send you a copy of this book. You can call 1-800-265-3100. Ask for your new money mindset today only. We'll be right back.